I'm Nick Sisson from NOAA's Greater Atlantic Regional Fisheries Office. This presentation will be an overview of our recent protected species management work related to offshore wind energy development. Note, information from this presentation may be shared on social media outlets. As I get started here, I wanted to point out that this presentation is part of NOAA's North Atlantic Right Whale Road to Recovery series. The North Atlantic Right Whale Road to Recovery describes NOAA fisheries' efforts to halt the current population decline and recover the species. More information about this effort can be found on our website under the North Atlantic Right Whale Species page. Offshore wind energy development touches on many different aspects of the Road to Recovery effort, as shown with the yellow circle highlights. Offshore wind energy development is growing fast. It is proposed for large areas along the coast of the United States. This map shows current offshore wind lease areas in yellow and potential future wind energy areas in red along the U.S. East Coast. Almost all issued leases are located in NOAA Fisheries' Greater Atlantic region, which spans from Maine through Virginia. The first projects will be constructed on the East Coast. Development is also planned for the West Coast and the United States and in the Gulf of Mexico. States and the federal government both have renewable energy goals driving the development. The 30 gigawatts by 2030 goal targets development in southern New England and mid-Atlantic regions, while nationally there's the goal of 110 gigawatts by 2050. Offshore wind is a new but growing industry in the U.S., and with that comes a number of growing challenges in understanding how these wind farms will interact with the marine ecosystem, including resources managed by NOAA Fisheries. These two maps show the mean annual density of North Atlantic right whales along the U.S. East Coast, with the northeast on the left and southeast on the right, is overlaid with the current status of offshore wind development, including lease areas shaded based on project status, call areas in the Central Atlantic and South Carolina, and planning areas in the Gulf of Maine in that blue outline crosshatch. Density output is the version 12 of the Roberts-Duke density model, and shows data from 2010 to 2019. All of these areas identified for wind energy development on the East Coast overlap with the range of right whales, with the planning areas also overlapping with the designated critical habitat of right whales. NOAA Fisheries is the lead federal agency for living marine resources management, responsible for the stewardship of the nation's ocean resources and their habitat. This includes marine mammals, sea turtles, fish, and other marine species protected by the Endangered Species Act and/or Marine Mammal Protection Act. Our role is defined by statutory mandates provided by Congress. Specific to offshore wind energy development, we have multiple roles spanning science and management. From a regulatory perspective, we serve as a cooperating, consulting, and permitting agency in the environmental review process for offshore wind energy projects. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or BOEM, is the lead federal agency or action agency. However, many other state and federal agencies are involved, such as the U.S. Army Corps, EPA, and Coast Guard. For this talk, I will focus primarily on our management work under the Endangered Species Act and Marine Mammal Protection Act. Consultation with NOAA Fisheries pursuant to Section 7 of the ESA is required to consider the effects of federal action on ESA-listed species and critical habitat. This consultation considers all activities or phases and effects associated with BOEM's proposed approval of a construction and operations plan for an offshore wind energy facility. This includes consideration of actions proposed by other federal agencies as well. These interagency or Section 7 consultations are designed to assist federal agencies in fulfilling their duty to ensure any action they authorize, fund, or carry out is not likely to jeopardize the continued existence of listed species or result in the destruction or adverse modification of designated critical habitat. Section 7 consultations are conducted at the request of the lead federal agency who prepares a biological assessment that considers the effects of all proposed actions, and NOAA Fisheries then responds to a BA with a biological opinion that may include an incidental take statement authorizing the incidental take of listed species. The biological opinion for offshore wind energy projects is comprehensive, covers the entire life of the project, construction, operations, and decommissioning, and includes all federal actions associated with a single project. To date, we have completed Section 7 consultations on a number of site assessment activities and construction and operation plan approvals. We have completed the ESA Section 7 biological opinions for the Vineyard Wind 1 and South Fork Wind projects, both located in southern New England. We completed a programmatic ESA consultation on offshore wind energy data collection and site assessment activities that includes actions from Maine to Florida. We're reviewing multiple biological assessments prior to initiation of Section 7 consultation for projects in southern New England and the Mid-Atlantic, and we're working with BOEM to develop a programmatic framework for Section 7 consultations. Now moving on to the MMPA. The MMPA prohibits the take of marine mammals unless certain exceptions are made. Offshore wind energy development involves several activities that may take marine mammals, and therefore developers must obtain an authorization, or ITA, to remain in compliance with the MMPA. The ITA may be issued as an incidental harassment authorization, IHA, or letter of authorization, LOA, both of which authorize the take of marine mammals, with the main difference being the length. IHAs are issued for a year and LOAs are issued for 5 years. To issue an ITA, NIMS must find the taking is of small numbers relative to the population size and must have a negligible impact on marine mammal species and stocks, meaning that the take authorized cannot result in impacts to annual rates or recruitment or survival. The ITA must include mitigation that affects the least practicable adverse impact on marine mammals and includes monitoring and reporting measures. NIMS has issued 2 IHAs to date for construction of offshore wind projects and continues to issue numerous high-resolution geophysical survey IHAs and is currently processing 9 LOA applications for the construction of offshore wind projects. Issuance of an ITA constitutes a federal action, therefore requiring NIMS to make a determination under National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, and Section 7 under the Endangered Species Act. An ITA cannot be issued until these processes are complete. Avoidance, mitigation, and monitoring measures are all critical components of the responsible development of offshore wind infrastructure. Decisions regarding the location of leases are made by BOEM. NOAA provides the best available scientific information on a number of trust resources, including marine mammals, to inform BOEM's planning and siting processes. Based on these data, we have provided recommendations to BOEM on areas to avoid leasing due to the potential impacts on protected species should development occur. And as part of the environmental review process for projects, we also recommend and/or require mitigation monitoring measures to minimize the impact of development on protected species and their habitat. Examples include time year restrictions, vessel speed restrictions, as well as various monitoring and reporting measures. We work with BOEM and the developer to build measures into proposed action that will avoid, minimize, and monitor effects of the action. We have also developed a number of technical resources related to our statutes and also to improve regional monitoring efforts. This includes information need documents for assessing effects of offshore wind energy activities on ESA-listed species, links to technical guidance presentations about our statutes and trust resources, our issued regulatory documents, as well as passive acoustic monitoring resources. These resources are meant to help stakeholders in their evaluation of project impacts, improve regional coordination, and be a central location to find information relative to our efforts on offshore wind energy development. All this information can be linked on our offshore wind page and the Greater Atlantic Region wind webpage. Given the range of threats from offshore wind development and the uncertainty that surrounds many potential impacts, from the management perspective, we work closely with our science centers as well as external partners to ensure data collection and research is done in a way to maximize utility for the management of NOAA trust resources and understanding of interactions with offshore wind development. This includes planning for uncertainty through expert elicitations, marine spatial planning, identifying short and long-term research objectives such as oceanographic modeling and adapting our survey enterprise, developing resources and tools to aid in decision-making, and collaborating on mitigation, monitoring, and reporting strategies to avoid and minimize potential impacts. We also coordinate actively to improve our understanding of the effects of offshore wind development on protected species and habitat, including regionally through the Regional Wildlife Science Collaborative. My colleagues Sean Hayes, Chris Orphanides, and Jen Davis are all giving talks at this meeting that touch on some of these topics in more detail. Thank you for listening.